it's a hypothetical scenario. If you had $1 billion on day one when you started building your startup, what would you have done differently?
$1 billion in the
Yeah.
studies. It is more of the PMF which you need to establish, and it comes with time. No money can get you PMF faster than you imagine.
True.
So obviously, even if you had like millions of dollars in the bank account, that doesn't guarantee you a success. I mean, there are
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se, your one-stop shop for everything fintech. This is your host Shreyash Shani, and today we have with us Mr Anand Agrawal, founder of Credgencis. Hey Anand, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, man.
Credgencis is probably operating in a very unique segment in fintech that I haven't seen a lot of startups operating in. It's the probably the more ignored part of the digital lending piece, the collections piece, right? And if you meet any lending expert or anyone who has spent his time worthwhile in lending, they would say कि lending के लिए तुम underwriting बना लोगे, तुम बाकी सब कुछ बना लोगे, but collection जब तक crack नहीं करोगे तब तक तुम्हारा धंधा नहीं होना है. So with that note, over to you Anand. Let's start first with a brief intro of yourself, a background, what were you doing before this, and all of that, and then a brief about Credgencis as a company. Over to you.
Sure. I'm Anand Agrawal. I graduated from IIT from a computer science background. I've worked with multiple startups during the course of college, and then as well after college, we worked with one engineering companies. Had seen the company grow from a very small size of 40-50 members to a very large one. So I had seen the journey of 1 to 10 there already once. And I think post that we began our journey with Credgencis, building the collection space. So Credgencis is a platform which allows you to manage all your collection activities on one single platform. It's a one-stop solution for collections. It gives you right from day one what all collection activities you need to execute, all of those modules, communications, calling, legal collections, maybe returns applications. So all of that would be done on our platform. So I think traditional collections would be where you would be managing 10 different platforms, 10 different integrations, all of that concise to one, and a better data-driven approach to do your collections gets done on our platform.
Got it. Super. So I think as far as I've seen, right, this is probably one of the more unique concepts, or I wouldn't call it unique, but much needed concepts, and something that is less dwelled into until recently, right? There have been a few new entrants in the market in the last couple of years, but uske pehle this was probably a raw space. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you on kind of doing something which is much needed given the digital lending guidelines and everything. I think collections now have to be a lot more tightly managed, and you guys are probably doing the job there. So kudos to you. Having said that, let's straightly dive into the next segment, or the first segment of the podcast, called Entrepreneurship Ki Baat. Let's get to the first question right away, right? What inspired you to start something of your own?
So I think I remember in my third year, we had been doing a startup with my fellow colleagues from college hostel, and that was into advertisement, digitizing of offline advertisement, like you can bet and multiple other things around.
Okay.
But obviously, it was just a stunt which we felt like it's an opportunity where we can get into, but it's a very operational heavy work. That is what we understood after 6 months of working with that. Then sort of like working with some startup where we could live that journey once, what it takes to build a startup. I think that was the reason to join Balance and also see the growth there. When the time was right, we again with a colleague of mine from college started off this company, and my who is also a lawyer by profession, joined us on this front. what we would see in the market is majority of these lenders were getting into digital lending, and many of the fintechs and startup were coming
True.
into digital lending. And it was the era of 2018, 19. I think most of these companies were giving paperless loans. They're giving out just on the basis of credit scores. So obviously, if you're
True.
kind of being so forefront on the lending side, you have to control the backdoor as well, which is collections. You need to be kind of spot on how the collections happen. You have like controls on that. What kind of measures are you taking to do your collections internally, or when you're outsourcing, you have control on agencies. So I think that's where we could see a gap, where there is no technological driven platform or solution which was enabling these lenders to do collections, or a platform which is out of the box, allowing you to do collections and not build the whole platform by yourself. So that was the idea. In fact, many companies have come even before us into collection space, but most of them were into service based, or were kind of doing outsourced kind of management of collections. We were the first ones who kind of tried it from a technology approach, where we thought a platform for allowing you to manage and kind of track your collections by yourself. And COVID helped us, because I think during the moratorium period, right after we started, COVID happened, and there was a lot of accounts which got accumulated during COVID and moratorium, which was to be kind of managed, and obviously you can't do that in a traditional approach. The accounts has kind of being multiplied for which the collections should happen. And hence I think we found our way at the right time, like this, to get this solution.
Got it. But I think when you before you started Credgencis, you were working at a startup, right? If I'm not wrong, in a data scientist role. So ऐसा क्या हुआ कि you were like कि boss, let's चालू करते हैं, मतलब let's do something of our own, खुद का धंधा चालू करते हैं, ये सब तो ठीक है.
Yeah, I think during I was the first one who joined 1NG as a data scientist. I was the first member of even founding that team itself. Yeah, small team within 1NG. By that growth of 2.5 years, a personal growth of 2.5 years there in 1NG had taught me a lot of things. I met so many people. Obviously got inspired by the founders of how they have been able to pull this off. They have been solving challenging problems. At the same time, there were many problems which we had solved there in 1NG, which needed maintenance, obviously, which was becoming a little monotonous for us as well. And given that was the situation, we thought of trying out new things, what could be possible in the market. I think financial sector was something which was of more interest, especially on a personal side. Financial sector has always been a priority there, but what we could see is that lending is where most of these fintechs end up making money. And if they are kind of getting into lending, there are already so many loan management systems available in the market. What all problem and opportunities are there in the market which we could solve? And hence I think we kind of landed on the collections problem. Though we started on just a small legal collections piece, given our one of the co-founders from the legal background. But then eventually ended up building the whole platform where all of the activities of collections could be managed through.
Got it. Interesting. So I think it was probably, to kind of summarize it, a factor of basically getting inspired by the founders, the way you're working with, the personal growth that you saw in the entrepreneurial journey over there, and then it kind of came in naturally to you saying कि यार अभी करना है तो खुद का ही something करना है. Was that how it went?
Yeah, I mean, even that stint in my third year, there was always in the mind that something of our own I want to build, and not obviously forever be working in a MNC.
Got it.
So that was always back of the mind. But for that, you need some initial level of understanding of how things are built, how those experiences get like. Hence, I think that was most important to see. Once I had that, I thought this is the right time to take the plunge and get started.
Got it. Fair enough. Moving on to the next question, right? What was the moment like when you started Credgencis? What was the moment when you realized कि यार ये अभी पकड़ लिया ये traction? Now this is this is going to go the mile, like this is going to go the distance?
I think 2019 start, I think we had began our journey. But I think for the first year, things were pretty slow. It wasn't to be paced, which we imagined. But I think then COVID happened. Our revenue, what was in March 2020, suddenly became zero in April. That was like a toll for us, near that situation for us. But it went on for 6 months. We didn't lose hope at that moment. We went on to understand deeper requirements with the bankers and all. Especially in the banking side, a lot of connects had been established by then. We were trying to understand what was needed by that market and kept on building for it. But right after the moratorium was coming to an end, or it was the moment when there was just 1 month left for the moratorium to end. There were so many inbound leads from banks, from fintechs, from NBFCs, which made us feel there is definitely a requirement here, there is definitely a market here, which we are building, which we are building for. And I think at that moment we felt we just need to double down ourselves, and I think we'll make our way through this. And exactly that's what happened right after the moratorium. There were so many onboarding which happened within the 6 months from zero revenue to around 2 million.
Awesome. So basically, a factor or a mixture of basically being at the right place at the right time with the right solution in place. Like basically, जब वहाँ पे आग लगी पड़ी थी, आप फायर एक्सटिंग्विशर लेके खड़े थे वहाँ पे कि भाई आ जाओ, हमारे पास ऑलरेडी रेडी है.
Right, exactly. I mean, nobody knew COVID would happen.
Right.
And we started back then thinking about everything is getting digitized, why not collections? And suddenly this event happened. Obviously, it wasn't the best of the times for anybody. But I think for us, from a business standpoint, it was the time where we got a lot of opportunities. And this is where we could prove ourselves and get the PMF established.
Bilkul. So now, I think it's almost been 4 years, some months since we have started Credgencis, right? So
Right.
looking back, right, what has been the most humbling moment for you that kind of made you challenge everything that you know about everything?
I think the way I would call the way how things are seen by the collections domain, especially we all three of us do not exactly belong to the collections domain from our past experiences, not from our college background. But obviously, when we were talking to the lenders and these bankers, there is a kind of a boundary established in the minds of the people that collection is taking to run it, or this is how collections happen. And while we were kind of speaking to them, our idea was not to pitch exactly the solutions right away on the first call. Rather, listen to them, understand their problem. What they do today, can that be transformed in a better way using some technological solutions? So I think listening to them, we would keep on thinking about what are the parallels in some other industries. For example, there would be a lot of communications getting sent by these lenders. You want to send like an SMS reminder, email reminder, but it has to be in a way that if SMS did not get delivered, email should get sent. If email did not get delivered, WhatsApp should get sent, or based on some behavioral interactions of the borrowers, you're kind of targeting customers for the next set of communications. Generally, there are marketing solutions in the marketing domain, which are platforms. There are platforms which would provide solutions to target your customers for upselling, or maybe what things you have added in cart you haven't transacted, and you keep getting reminders for such use cases. So I think that was one of the parallel ways we put that onto our platform. There were parallels around. There were challenges of payment gateways. So we integrated into collections of payment gateway solutions. So our idea was just to listen to the problems from each one of the banks, try collating at an industry level what parallels have been there in the other sectors, and build the solutions in an integrated way for the collections. That's how we have been able to build the platform, and I think that has been working out well.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Having said that, right, 4 साल में I'm sure you might have made a few mistakes. So what was the biggest mistake that you made, and like what did you learn from it?
I think during COVID times, the market was quite opposite to, I wouldn't call it opposite, but quite tough in terms of hiring.
Indeed.
The market, especially in the 2021, when there were so many startups and so many companies getting funded, there was hiring boom and everybody had great offers. So obviously, we also kind of took it on us that everything could be done by us. I think we learned this lesson of delegation at a very late stage.
Okay.
That you need to delegate few things at some point of time, because you can't manage everything by yourself when the organization is growing and when I think the team is growing.
बिल्कुल.
So I think initially the thought process was everything needs to be through us, needs to be kind of understood by us. That was one of the thought process, but over a period of time we managed to learn the fact that you need to trust and move on. Finding people who would be on the same side of you, who would understand the vision which you have for building this organization, the problem which you're solving, and trust the person and let him kind of take the decisions there. So I think that was something which we have definitely understood over a period of time. And I think today the lives are much better. Especially we hadn't seen like weekdays, we haven't seen many of those weekends, many of those days where we would be free. But today I think there is a whole management team, especially the head of the respective departments, and they have been doing that thing.
Awesome. No, I think this is what I've seen as a common thread between a lot of founders, right? And specifically people who are either first time founders. Delegation is something that is learned at a later stage when the actual need arises, and जब वो what do you call it, the boiling point comes, when essentially the boiling point of that situation comes, right? That is when delegation as a skill is kind of picked up. And I've seen this as a common thread among a lot of early stage, or I would say first time founders, mainly because what happens is founders are generally passionate people, right? They want to know everything that's happening in the organization. They want to understand everything. They want to do everything because they feel कि यार मेरे से बेटर कोई कर नहीं सकता, या फिर मैं समझाऊंगा नहीं तो जो विजन हम लोग का वो विजन के हिसाब से नहीं होगा. And it is a very difficult it's a very difficult task letting go and trusting someone else with your own baby, your own startup, right? It essentially becomes very difficult, and sometimes that is very challenging, and I've seen this happen a lot. And I think I'm glad that you guys have actually gone through that phase, and you have come across on the other side successfully, because I've seen a lot of startups kind of seeing a lot of challenges because of this, and maybe even failing because of these situations, because the founders gets burnt out, right? There is only so many things a normal human being can do without getting burnt out. Yeah.
Yes, I think even with the journey before this, everything was kind of getting done by us in our respective jobs, right? Like we were individual contributors,
Right.
More than managers of at a significant level. So I think letting go that requires some time. Like kind of don't tend to kind of become like a super manager on day one. Obviously, that takes some time, and I think it's a journey where you learn a lot of things and you get to be unsaid.
No, indeed, definitely. So, moving on to the next part, right? What is probably, I would say, what are the 3 takeaways for budding entrepreneurs from your journey? 3 don'ts, I would say.
Okay. So I think first of all, I would say don't aim for the perfect, because many times I've seen, especially people who are right out of college, they are ambitious, they are kind of curious, and then at the same time they want to develop and build products, they want to kind of build things, but at the same time they have been targeting for a perfection in that. The moment you start doing that, there is no end to it. And you kind of keep on going in that journey without taking feedbacks in between. So ideally, if you are going that path, it's better to get a beta version first of all built, and then try taking a feedback, then move on to the next set of building versions. It's better than targeting the whole perfection in one go and trying to build that in one go. So obviously that's one. I've seen that in many people, and I keep telling that to our team as well. The second is so I think in our personal lives as well, there are many things which you would find ending up getting solved at some point of time. It just takes time. It takes time. Sometimes you just need to give some problems more time than you thought. And you might be worried about this is taking much more time than I thought, and this is giving me some stress. It's a phase, I would say. Don't lose hope in between, and rather keep on fighting for it. Eventually, it would get solved. That's the journey we had left, especially when you would have seen COVID phases of like 1, 2nd, 3rd. And so we built our company during the COVID phase. And that's for us. And you might have imagined so many times we would have lost faith. But we didn't. We rather kept motivating the team. We stuck together, and I think things worked out well at the end. So that's a great learning for all of us during this and the whole experience of building this. Third is again about trusting people. I would say you would have to think from a team perspective. You need to start figuring out who you could trust on some things needs to be done, especially when there is some set of young people. They would make mistakes. It's fine. You have to accept that people at that stages, or even while you were younger, would have made a lot of mistakes. So that's not a problem, but rather at that point of time, if you stood by, that would be the person who you would trust the most in the future. So I think that's more of a team building exercise, which we need to learn a little more in our early days. Eventually you get to know, but I think as early you realize this, the better it is for building the whole core team and the team which takes you from that one.
No, definitely. I think that's beautifully put, and will definitely be relevant to a lot of budding entrepreneurs. I've seen a lot of them, especially the first point resonated a lot when you said don't get too caught up in the perfection of things, right? I've seen, I can't recount the number of times I've seen people getting caught up building the perfect product. यार पहला release में ही सब features डालने, सब कुछ करना है. You kind of get caught up doing that, and बाकी की चीजें you forget about a lot of things, and you are essentially giving and if you're not taking feedback, right, as you said, then it kind of just ends up I would say putting your energy in the wrong areas, and ultimately you end up with something that is built basis your own biases and not actual feedback from market. So it's your idealistic perfectionism that you are creating, but might not resonate with the audience that well.
And I would say better to realize early that you are in the wrong direction than to do it later.
Exactly. It's all about agility, right? To fail fast and move on, rather than build out the entire product and then getting rejected because of the failure. No, perfect. I think thanks for those don'ts for the budding entrepreneurs. Moving on to the last question of this segment, and probably one of my favorite ones to ask, right? It's a hypothetical scenario. If you had $1 billion on day one when you started building your startup, what would you have done differently?
$1 billion.
Yeah, day one पे था तुम्हारे पास. You got some angel investor who was super excited by the idea and probably gave you that funding. How would you have done things differently?
I don't know if things would have been different. It's not about burning money and getting faster with building your product or space. It is more of the PMF which you need to establish, and it comes with time. No money can get you PMF faster than you imagine.
True.
So obviously, even if you had like millions of dollars in the bank account, that doesn't guarantee you a success. I mean, there are so many examples now given in this particular year in the market where startups had raised great amount of money, but just putting that money into action would lead you to success and getting to a stage where the organization would do very well is not the right metric to look at. I think most of these companies now have started to look at the bottom line and not just the top line. And that's a learning.
And boy, are we glad.
Yeah. And then I think in the 21, 22, that perspective had changed completely from the top line to the bottom line structure. So I think obviously having that money would just, I think that would have just fetched us more interest income, but more than that.
No, beautifully said. I think thank you so much for that. That essentially highlights the end of the first segment. Let's move on to the next segment called Dhande Ki Baat, where we'll deep dive a bit more into the business side of things and how essentially digital lending as an industry is doing with the perspective of collections, right? Having said that, let's get on to the first question. What is the origin story of the name Credgencis? Why that name?
Okay. It's we in fact took a week to come up with that name. In fact, we kept on kind of messaging in our WhatsApp groups of both Rishabh and Maya. We kept on talking about different names, what it should be. I think, but we thought something has to be related to credit because we are in that space, and something which is most important to credit, which is obviously collections. But can there be a word which defines it? So obviously we took the word credit from credit, and genetics is the word we call it. Like, okay, when you're talking about what's the most important thing when you're kind of doing it credit, there's two things: underwriting and then collections. So obviously, if both of these are solved, you're doing very great and fabulous at kind of lending. So genetics is the word from where we took the genetics, and then we kind of combined that word to find out genetics.
So this name was essentially like, what was the iteration when this name came out? In what iteration of the?
Probably don't remember it, but I think the spellings were something which we were kind of fighting for, because Genix, Genics, and many of the people, when we kind of said, when you don't have like a brand name and nobody knows you and no company name is kind of there in the market. So at that point of time, when you say Credgencis, the normal spelling is like Genix, and then we had to correct it again and again. I think it continued from there on. But we had come up with different set of examples, but most of them were out there in the market with some other companies, some other kind of profit statements. We said, okay, this seems to be kind of combining the word and better kind of meaning to what we are exactly doing.
Got it. No, I think makes a lot of sense. But yeah, moving on to the next line of thought over here. Why essentially collections only at that point of time? So back in 2018, 2019, when you were brainstorming about Credgencis, right? What was the industry landscape like in digital, I would say, lending space, and kind of what made you think this is exactly the right segment that we should pick up?
I think there was one more sector which we were looking even before this, is the legal sector. We briefly looked at it. But then we could see it's not a big market. The time and all is very limited of that market. And hence we could see what more possibilities of things are related to this. I think legal collections was one of the space where everything was being done in a manual way. Or in fact, the Excel files which were getting shared to agencies and out maybe teams across their branches were done in Excel files. There were no platforms being kind of used to do that. No data security aspect was kind of discussed. While at the same time, the regulators were being stringent in the market with respect to lending, how it should be done. With respect to digital lending, there were norms getting defined, being laid out. I think that was the time where all of this put together, we could see this as one of the space with full of opportunities, with full of kind of possibilities, and no competition at all. You tend to kind of either foray into an area where you have kind of innovated something completely new, and the way of kind of doing things is very differently. For example, Uber is an example where you did not end up booking taxis on your phone before, and then that was a very different way to do that. And then there is like examples where you are trying of digitizing the traditional approaches of doing things into more a tech-savvy approach, especially for businesses. I think the second aspect is what we like better. We were also optimizing for a B2B aspect than B2C. I think there you tend to make money and more sustainable businesses faster than a B2C setup. And hence, I think the choice was a little more thought through, not natural or something out of the box, but thought through choice was made, and hence we forayed into that area, and eventually got to see a lot more things which we hadn't thought and understood at our research stage, and started on this journey building the whole collections for our tech space.
Understood. So what was the reaction of banks and NBFCs when you first took your product to them, like after your initial build? What was the first knee-jerk reaction? Were they happy with it, or was there a difference in reaction when you took it to them before COVID and after COVID?
I think before COVID it was not a full-fledged product as well. It was one or two modules we had built by then. It had been very short period of time for us to build that. But obviously after COVID, which is after first phase of COVID in 2020, when we took the product, they were the ones who were participating in how we should build the product. They were pretty amazed. Right. We were on the right tracks, but there's a lot more things which you can. That is the opinion they had on us, and in fact, they would keep suggesting while we were demoing the product to them and show them the whole use cases on the platform. They were the ones who were suggesting what more you could do, how you could do, how differently maybe a two-wheeler loan would do their collections versus maybe how collections for a personal loan would be unsecured versus a secured loan. Right. The depth we started getting as a feedback from them when they started looking at the product. But the first reaction was, you're definitely on the right track. This is what's needed by the market. And I think we are the first ones to show that this can even be done through a very well integrated platform with all of the modules available on one single platform. Because generally, in a large lending setup, what tends to happen is that there is different teams of collections. For example, a digital collection team is very different, a foreign collection team is very different, and on-ground or a legal collection teams are very different. So can you connect all of these teams on one single platform was the idea there which we had. And if those teams can collaborate with each other to achieve like the single goal of maybe maximizing your recovery rates by also reducing the cost of collections, and nothing better than that for the entire group,
of course,
entire organization. So I think that was the view which we took, and we understood their feedback.
Got it. No, I think this also would be very encouraging sign for you guys as well, given the fact that this is exactly the signal that founders should be looking for, especially in a B2B industry, to conclude that PFM is perfect. Like, this product is needed, this PFM is right. Abhi isko khali optimize karna hai. We need to add a few more features, and this is going to be on a roll.